Alright, what's up, guys? We're back here with another movie review, and today we're looking at 2015's Deathgasm. Now, I had watched this when it first came out, and I just watched it again about 2 hours ago, and I put some thought into it. I really liked it the first time I watched it, and I really liked it the second time. I even liked it more the second time. This movie is, black metal and the heavier metal genres like grindcore, deathcore, black metal, death metal, they there hasn't really been a movie that's really, a good movie that's really surfaced around. There's been movies that have been around metal and stuff like Metallica Through the Never, The Dirt, hair rock, just rock and metal in general. I wouldn't necessarily consider Motley Crue metal, um, even though some people do call them hair metal. I've also heard hair rock and glam metal. I've heard that one too. I've heard it called many things, but there's never really been a movie that was actually really good that has circled around genres like death metal and black metal. And this movie really brought it. There are bands such as Cannibal Corpse, fucking Whitechapel, uh, Battlecross, Judas Priest, all kinds of bands. There's Metallica. There's all kinds of references in this. This movie is riddled with references to bands, riddled with posters. I mean, this movie is fucking great. I love every inch of it. Now, some people, see, here's my issue. This movie could possibly come off as, see, this would be a movie that I recommend watching if you're not a metalhead and you're watching this review. I'd recommend watching this after you have a somewhat decent knowledge of metal, because this movie is riddled with references. And not to mention the soundtrack of the movie itself. See, that's my point. Here's what I'm trying to get to. This movie has bands like Cannibal Corpse, Whitechapel, death metal, Bath. I'm pretty sure I heard a Bathory song. I don't even know, but which, let it be known that, for the record, my favorite black metal band. I'm sorry, I'm a Cradle of Filth fan. I'm a Cradle of Filth fan, okay? Bathory is a close second, though. But I love Cradle of Filth, and I'd have to put Behemoth at third. But Bathory takes second, and if I had to pick a fourth, I'd go with Dimmu Borgir. Now that we're off that, see, this would be a movie that, if you're not a metalhead and you're watching this, and this might be a movie that interests you, before I even start talking about the movie, I'd recommend you start listening to, because this movie puts you in the heaviest side of metal out there. If you don't know anything about metal, I would not recommend watching this movie. And if you're like into some genre like pop or something, this is definitely not the movie for you, because Cannibal Corpse and shit like that is the soundtrack for this, which I don't have a problem with. I love Cannibal Corpse. But that's another thing. I'm going off topic here a little bit, but when do I never go off topic? I see, like, this isn't talking about the movie, but I see, like, people when they're trying to get their boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend, siblings, whatever, into metal, they always start them off with like Slipknots. It's Slipknots. You got Slipknots, and then they start them off with bands like Cannibal Corpse, Infinite Annihilator, Born of Orifices, whatever you want to call that band. Whitechapel. And I've also seen other people try to start at Iron Maiden, Dio. Listen, I'm going to go ahead and say this right now because I've been thinking about this. If you want to get someone into metal, start them off into a genre. Try to get them out of that genre later on. Or if they like it, whatever. You like what you like. But try to get them into a genre that may not even be metal. Like, for example, my girlfriend. Before I met her, she was listening to Hollywood Undead. And I tried to start her off slow. So I started her off with bands like the Marmozets, Hailstorm, then a couple metalcore bands sprinkled in there, like Bullet for My Valentine and Falling Embers. And then I took her to a concert, which was Alice Cooper and Hailstorm. She loved it. Now she likes metal. I got her into bands like Cannibal Corpse eventually. So that's how you fucking do it. You start off slow. Don't go into metal first off. Start with bands like Bring Me the Horizon. Start with bands like Hollywood Undead, Linkin Park. Then get up to Cannibal Corpse eventually. You cannot start them off, even in Iron Maiden territory. Iron Maiden might be a little bit too much for a beginner metalhead. That might still be a little too much. You got to start them off little dabs at a time. Trust me, it works. Maybe Metallica, because Metallica sucks. Other than the first 3 albums. First 3 albums was good. I'll admit their 4th one was good too, but everything after the first 4 albums is garbage, okay? Although I will say Hardwired and a couple songs sprinkled out throughout the other albums I do like. But Metallica in general, I'm sorry. I'm a fan of like bands like... I'm just going to go ahead and say it. Metallica has timeless albums and stuff, but Jesus, I'm going off topic again. I'm just going to say it. Metallica has like good albums, but I think they're very overrated and they suck. Okay? They have good songs, yeah, but they're still pretty overrated. Like, even people that don't listen to metal know Metallica. My favorite album is Enter Sandman. You got those people. Okay, let's get into Deathgasm. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I fucking love this movie. It's a dream come true. See, there's points in my life too where I'll like be craving some thrash metal, but next month, the month after that, I'll be craving black metal. Month after that, I'll be getting back into my emo phase just a tad bit. Then I'll go straight back to black metal. It's all over the fucking place. There was a point where I was into deathcore, which all deathcore sounds the same. I'm not really a fan of most deathcore bands. I'll listen to like Job for a Cowboy and Infinite Annihilator. But I don't listen to that much deathcore because a lot of the shit sounds the same. I'm sorry, it does. Infinite Annihilator does have quite a few differing riffs though, like Blasphemin and Three Bastards and Stoyle the Stillborn. Rings of Saturn is another one that I listen to. Whitechapel. Suicide Silence, of course. Just bands like that. Like, I tried to get into bands. I'll get into the movie eventually, but you're just listening. I think I'm just going to talk for a second. I tried to get into bands like Born of Orifices and Oceano and Winds of Plague. I never really dug that. Another genre that I got into for a while, but I never really I never really got back into it because it was kind of cheesy and gay, was power metal. There was a point in my life where I actually did listen to bands like Sabaton, Dragon Force, Gamma Ray, just power metal bands. I was listening to, okay, non-metal thing here. I gotta admit one of my non-metal things. Totally non-metal. There was a point where I was listening to bands like Nightwish. I am not afraid to admit that. I don't anymore, for the record. I don't anymore. Okay, for the record. Okay. Oh. Okay. So Deathgasm. This movie is about an hour and a half. It came out in 2015. This movie is fucking brutal. Okay? Just like a goddamn metal movie should. It's brutal. It's filled with language. It's got the best fucking soundtrack. So this movie, the movie begins with we meet this kid, it's this kid narrating, and his name is Brody, and he's like this teenager metalhead, and he's into black metal and shit. He's into all kinds of shit, because I've seen in his like basement, he's got like Cannibal Corpse, Whitechapel, Battlecross, like all, those are all the ones that I thought off the side of my head. Judas Priest, there's a couple Metal Blade records scattered up on the wall. But my favorite record label would have to be Roadrunner. I like Metal Blade, but I'm also subscribed to Fearless, Relapse, Solid State, and what was that other one? Because Fearless has like, because I do like screamo. I like a lot of screamo music. One of my favorite screamo bands has to be. I actually hadn't listened to them that much. The only song that I really heard from them, calling them screamo, I've heard some people call them metalcore, but I really wouldn't consider this band metalcore. Oh Sleeper. Screamo and metalcore are kind of, I don't know. I never really considered them apart. It's hard with some metal genres. It really is. But I also found this new band on there that I really like. It's called Veil of Maya. It's like some kind of, I don't know. Fuck it, I like it. I don't even care. Yeah, Deathgasm. So it starts off with this kid Brody. He's narrating. Apparently his parents got killed or something, and he's going to live with his uncle or something. And his uncle's like a real religious guy, and he's got a douchebag older brother. He's got a douchebag older cousin and his religious wife. No, the dad's religious wife. And he lives he's got a room, but he also lives in the garage. Oh, so it explains how shitty his life is as a metalhead. And the movie continues on. It's just going through his normal everyday life. And then we get to meet his friends, which are a fat one named Giles, this really fat kid named Giles, and I forget what the nerdy kid's name is, but they're into D&D, and I'm sorry, D&D is so gay. I'm sure there's people out there that would yell at me for saying D&D is gay, but there's also people that would praise me. Listen, search up LARPing. Then you will then tell me that is not gay. Search up LARPing. Search it up and tell me that is not fucking gay. Anybody who does that is gay. I'm sorry. Look up LARPing. 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 Look it up. It's so bad. But they're into D&D. Oh, so they're playing D&D, and we get to find out that his older cousin is a real big douchebag, and he's got this douchebag guy. You know how in like movies, or you got that bully on the playground that's got like a guy up here, like the head guy, the head bully, and then he's got like one or two guys behind him, and everything that he says, they're like, yeah, what he said. Yeah, what he said. Oh, yeah, what he said. That's all they say. Well, he's got one of those. A nameless, yeah, what he said guy. He pops up a couple times during the movie, but yeah, he's a yeah, what he said. I'm going to call him the yeah, what he said guy. So then we get to meet the hottest chick in school character. And she's dating his older cousin, but his older cousin's abusive towards her, I think. They never really go into detail with that, but I think that's what's going on here. So then movie continues on, and he meets this kid named Zach with 2 Ks. And this guy is, Brody's a metalhead, but this guy is like fucking spike armband, goddamn razor around his neck. He's a fucking brutal dude. This dude does not fuck around. He is a true metalhead. At least that's how they portray him. I don't know if the actual actor is a metalhead, but that's how they portray him. And he meets him in a record shop. And we also see this woman. She's like a fucking psychic or whatever. And as soon as Brody meets up with Zach, she gets this vision in her cup or whatever. And it's a skull. And that means bad juju. So Zach and Brody are now friends. And we learn that Zach is like this fucking lawbreaker kid. And they do a bunch of shit. And they eventually, throughout the movie, scattered throughout these parts, they're talking about this band that just went missing. And the singer was Nikki Daggers. And the band was, I forget the band, but the singer went missing. His name was Nikki Daggers. And Zach finds out that the fucker went missing in a small town, and they found an abandoned house, and they think he's in there. They go in there, they find him, and he's got the last band album of his band in his hands. So they try to steal it from him. He wakes up with a baseball bat and tries to beat the shit out of him. He makes him give him the album back. He takes it back. And there's this one dude. Then this car drives up outside the house. And it's this dude in a suit. He pulls out a razor. And he goes inside the house. So Nikki throws the 2 kids, Brody and Zach, the album. And he says, hide it with your life. Or guard it with your life. So they leave, and the dude comes in and cuts Nikki Daggers' throat wide open and then bends his head back to where it's like a fountain of blood, and then you get to see the tendons from his neck. It's pretty brutal. I like it. But there's one kill in this that I was gleed to see because I've wanted to see it before, but I never saw it. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I've always wanted to see this in a horror. This isn't necessarily a horror movie. I consider it like a comedy horror. But the fucker shoves a chainsaw in this dude's asshole. It is so brutal, and I want to watch it on repeat. It's so fucking awesome. I've always wanted to see a chainsaw shoved up someone's ass and then pulled out through the front of their body. I always thought that would be the most brutal thing, and I was right. That was so fucking brutal, and I loved it. I've seen some brutal kills, but getting a chainsaw shoved up your asshole is pretty close to awesome. I'm sorry, it is. God damn, it was so cool. It's like literally pulled out a goddamn chainsaw getting shoved in your ass. How brutal is that? It hurts. It's awesome. Maybe it's not good that I think about brutal things like this. Oh well. So, moving on. Yeah, so now Nikki Daggers is fucking dead. And they play this, they open it and find out that it's a different record, and these papers fall out. And they're unreleased songs. And Brody deciphers them, and they say the Black Hymn, and it's supposed to summon King of Demons. And they play it, and they form a band called Deathgasm, and they start playing this one song, the Black Hymn, and the whole town turns into demons. Well, most of the town. So now Brody and Zach are together, and they decide, well, the whole town turns into demons, and they're sitting in the car one night because Zach's dad owns a car shop. His mom's dead, but his dad owns a car shop, and they hear banging in the back of the car shop, and it's Zach's dad, but he has ripped his eyes out, and he's using them like the fucking witch ladies from Clash of the Titans. Or that one really creepy chick from the Dark Crystal. But he's like, fucking, oh, dude. So then, Brody gets a table saw, rips it off, and then saws part of his dad's face off. Zach's dad's face off. And then they shove him down and drop a car engine on top of his head to finish it off. And blood flies everywhere. This movie's great. So then they go riding around, and they decide to go stop by the record store where the psychic chick was, because she knows all about this demon juju shit. They go there and find out that she's like bleeding out, and they have a talk with her, and they told her that they played the Black Hymn, and she tells them that they're fucked. So then they decide to oh yeah, so then an arm pops out from under the table that she's leaning on, and it punches through her chest, and she dies. And this guy comes out, and I forget what happens to him. I think they just kill him. So then they're driving around, and they decide to go to... So basically, I want to go over this. So basically, earlier in the movie, the girl interest character, we're just going to call her the girl, Brody was hitting on her, so she invited him to the park to talk, so they talked. And the next day, she decided to find him, but she couldn't find him, so she found Zach, and he was stealing gasoline from a ambulance. Yes. She gives him this letter, and Zach reads it and takes it and decides to take Brody's place and take his girlfriend without him knowing. So that's going to be important later. So they're driving along. Oh yeah, he also told the girl character that Brody wasn't interested, which is also a lie. So that's going to become a pinpoint later. So they drive back to Brody's parents' house, and they fight before there. So they're kind of at odds right now. So they get up there, and they go inside, and they find... they find Brody's religious parents, but not the older cousin. So... So they find his religious parents, and they have this big old battle. and they hide themselves in the room, and they look for a gun or something. They find this box called church stuff in his parents' bedroom. They open it up, and it's a bunch of sex toys, butt beads, dildos, vibrators, and they decide to. We get the most interesting scene of the movie. They beat the shit out of the two demon parents with a bunch of sex toys. So we get a 5-minute long scene filled with chainsaws, demons getting smacked in the head with the butt beads. And then after that, Brody takes on the mother while the father takes Zach back in the bedroom. He tries to choke him out, but then Zach takes a dildo off the table and then shoves it in his mouth and keeps stabbing the inside of the mouth. And he eventually unhinges the demon's jaw, and his jaw falls to the floor, and there's a bunch of blood everywhere. So basically, he just mouth fucked the demon until his jaw fell off. That's literally the kill. He mouth fucked a demon until the jaw fell off. That is an actual kill in this movie. Wow. This movie definitely comes up with new ones, huh? That's not as worse as the next one we're about to get. So the mother. Zach comes out to save him. Unfortunately, he fails, so Brody decides to take 2 more dildos off the floor and stab them in both sides of the mother's head. And to top that off, one of the dildos is a vibrator, so it's still moving. You know what? Did Steel Panther make this movie? Anyway, I mean, Steel Panther is glam, but damn, I don't even know what to say. Oh, they get worse from there. We haven't even gotten to the anal chainsaw rape. You guys probably think I'm crazy talking about this. I don't know. I've always found interest in really, really, really brutal kills. There's just something about kills that are so brutal. They're so fun to watch. There's just something about them. Chunks flying. So, yeah. So then the older cousin comes in through the door, but he isn't possessed. But Brody decides to take the chainsaw because he hates him and completely caps his head off. Yeah. And before they got there, there was a note on the door. Because before Brody and Zach got there, the 2 nerdy friends that like D&D and the girl character showed up at the house, but they weren't there, so they decided to put the note on the door. When Zach got there, he walked up the door first and took the note because he didn't want him to find out about what happened the night of, where he told him Brody wasn't interested. But they end up going to the school anyway, and this whole fight breaks out because they find out, and they decide, shit, they gotta play the black hymn backwards. And then we find out that they're being chased by the occult people looking for the black hymn. And they got to get rid of it before it gets played backwards. So earlier in the movie, when this guy killed Nicky Daggers, we're going back a bit, he goes back to this bald guy. And he didn't get the black hymn pages. This guy's mad. So he orders these people in cloaks and demon masks to chop his head off. They do. It falls on the floor. And we get a very funny scene. I was in tears by the end of this. Well, maybe not tears, but I was laughing pretty damn hard. So they chop this dude's head off, and the blood flies all over this carpet because he's like sitting at his desk. So here he is sitting here, desk in front of him, big white hallway in front of him. And there's a carpet on the floor and all these different shit on the wall and stuff. And they chop this guy's head off on the carpet and blood spurts everywhere. And he gets all pissed at them. He's like, come on, did you have to get that on the tapestry or something? He said something about the carpet. Did you have to get that on the carpet? He's like, he tells them to do it again. And they look confused. And he's like, do it again. So they threw down a tarp. Threw down a tarp and picked up the body and picked the head back up and put it back on the head. Put the head back on the body. And then they just dropped it. And he's like, yeah, that'll work. And then this woman comes up from under the desk and you hear this like pop sound. And then he takes her head and just shoves her back down. And you hear like this gagging sound. Because the way that his face looked when he did this, she comes up and he's just like all serious. His face is just so stone cold, and then he just, while his face is stone cold, he just shoves his head back down. It was like one of his cult followers or something. It was like this random ass chick. That scene is just so random. I was in tears. I was just like, oh my god. The comical sense of this movie, it may be a little bit too over-sexualized for some people, but I personally think this movie is goddamn hilarious. Oh, so then we get the cult people come into town and they meet up with the messenger from the demon lord, and he says that only the blackest soul will be chosen by the demon lord, and the chick that was giving him a blowjob earlier decides to betray him and stab him in the back so she can become the black one. This succeeds, and the demon's messenger sides with her. So then Brody, the girl character and Brody are now in love again. They're now lovers, and Zach will never get her. So now Brody, her, and the two nerdy kids decide to go up to Nicky Dagger's place because he's got a bunch of amps, and their amps got fried. So they got to go up to Nicky Dagger's place. They go up there. The cult meets them up there. The cult has a bunch of assault rifles and stuff though, so they get captured and locked in another room. Then Nicky Dagger's corpse comes back to life and decides to talk about skull fucking everybody. That's an actual scene. He talks about how he wants to skull fuck everybody, and he chooses the kid with the glasses first. But then Zach comes back in to save the day, and he kills Nicky Dagger's possessed form. And he bursts into the room and chops up a bunch of the cult people, including shoving a chainsaw straight through his asshole. It's pretty brutal. So then the girl, one of the nerdy kids, the fat one, Giles, and Brody get into this room, but the other one gets lost, and he finds his way outside in the hallway, like in one of the outside hallways of the house. And he runs into one of these possessed demons and gets his, it first kicks him to the ground and then snaps his neck in several places and then completely rips his head out from his shoulders with the spinal cord still attached. Yeah, this movie's pretty brutal. I like it. So then the next scene we get is Zach gets taken outside with a bunch of zombies. He's out there killing a bunch of them. And Giles gets his arms ripped off by a bunch of other zombies, but then the girl character decides to kill a bunch of them. Zach comes back in. 3 a.m. shows up because at 3 a.m. the Demon Lord comes out. The woman is getting ready for her ritual, but then Zach decides to stab her in her chest before the ritual is complete. And Zach becomes the vessel for the Demon Lord. And there's a big battle with him, but then Brody decides to Zach stabs him first, and then he decides to play a ultimate guitar solo or whatever, play some kind of guitar solo, and it beats the Demon Lord because it was too powerful or something, and the Demon Lord is sent back to hell, and Brody is forced to slit Zach's throat before the Demon Lord breaks through, kills Zach. Movie over. There might be a deathgasm too. Hopefully not. I think this should be a movie that was single-handedly alone, just no more. They might be able to pull a second one out, but I feel like it's going to ruin the storyline. But Brody got the girlfriend character, and they're living together now. They got like a house or something together, and they're banging. They're together. They got a house. They're a family. And the movie ends with her leaving the room, and Brody's record player turns on, and it's Zach's voice on the other end. Yeah. Deathgasm. What would I rate Deathgasm? You know, I'm sorry. Critically wise, I just can't criticize this movie. I am going to do something that may confuse people. I'm giving it an A+. This movie deserves an A+. I'm sorry. I absolutely love this movie. I enjoyed it thoroughly both times. This movie is getting the very first A+ on this channel. And this is strictly my opinion. So remember to leave a comment, like, and subscribe.